You walk into a tackle store, or you're scrolling through listings online, and you find a rod labeled medium heavy. You buy it because medium heavy is the most versatile power class in bass fishing. It's supposed to handle Texas rigs, jigs, swimbaits, heavy topwater, flipping into brush, all of it. You get home, attach your reel, tie on a half-ounce jig, pitch it out, and within about 15 minutes, you realize something is off. The rod is loading and flexing through the entire blank, like you're throwing a 2-inch finesse worm on light line. That is not medium heavy. That is, at best, a medium. And here's the thing that makes it worse. It happens constantly, because there is no universal industry standard that defines what medium heavy actually means from one rod manufacturer to the next. Every company gets to decide how they classify their own rods, and some of them are considerably more accurate than others. That is the problem, and that is exactly what we are going to work through today. I went through 10 popular rods carrying the medium-heavy label across a wide range of price points, and only 3 of them actually performed like a genuine medium-heavy rod should. Before we get into it, hit subscribe. This is honest gear information without a sales pitch attached to it. And if that's useful to you, you'll want to be here for the rest of them. I'm Jerry Davis, and I've spent enough time around tackle shops, fishing forums, and rods at every price point to know that the label printed on the blank and the actual behavior of that blank in real fishing conditions do not always agree. Medium heavy should mean something specific. It should translate to a rod that comfortably handles lures from roughly 3/8 of an ounce up to a full ounce, with a backbone that allows you to drive a hook home at distance. Pull a fish out of cover without the rod folding, and still feel enough in the tip to detect the presentation. By the end of this, you'll know which rods on this list hold true to that definition, which ones fall short, and what to actually look for before your next rod purchase. Let's start with the Ugly Stik GX2, because this is the rod a lot of people hand to a beginner and say, "Here, this thing is practically indestructible." And that's not wrong. The fiberglass graphite composite blank is nearly impossible to break through normal fishing abuse, and for the price you're paying, the durability is legitimate. The GX2 medium heavy, though, runs soft, genuinely soft. That composite construction that keeps the rod in one piece when you lean it against a truck door or bounce it around a boat is also responsible for a slow, forgiving flex that does not behave like a medium-heavy rod. The tip section absorbs too much of the load. When you try to set a hook at 40 feet on a jig bite, the energy dissipates through the blank rather than snapping the hook home. For crankbait fishing, where a soft tip helps keep fish pinned on treble hooks through the fight, the GX2 can actually make a lot of sense. For flipping, punching, or fishing heavy jigs in cover, it is the wrong tool. The rating on the blank does not match the technique it's most often sold for. The Bass Pro Shop's Bionic Blade has a polished look on the rack, and the price is positioned to suggest something above starter rod territory. The problem is inconsistency. House brand rods from large retail chains often lack the same quality control discipline you'd find from a dedicated rod manufacturer. Anglers who've bought the Bionic Blade medium heavy report results that vary considerably from one rod to the next. Some feel adequately firm. Others flex well into medium territory. When you're trying to match a rod to a specific technique and a specific power class, that kind of variability is a real issue. The rod is not useless for the price. If you're a newer angler who needs a functional starting point and isn't fishing highly technique-specific presentations, it gets the job done. But if you need predictable, consistent performance from a rod you're building a technique around, the Bionic Blade asks you to trust a label more than the product earns. The Garcia Vengeance is a budget casting rod you'll find bundled in a lot of beginner combos. Garcia carries enough credibility in the tackle market that the name reassures buyers who aren't yet sure what to look for. The Vengeance medium heavy has a graphite blank and reasonable specs on paper, Based on what anglers consistently report, though, the blank runs soft for its classification. The tip section flexes beyond the point you'd want for a serious hook set on heavy cover presentations, and the overall feel lands closer to a medium power with fast action than a true medium heavy. For lighter Texas rigs in open water, weightless presentations, or moving baits in clean conditions, you may not notice the problem. Throw a 3/4 ounce punch rig into thick vegetation, and the soft blank becomes an immediate frustration. This is a fair rod for the money if you understand you're buying a light-duty rod. It just does not earn the medium-heavy label in real fishing terms. Okuma's Cellulo and Samar series are frequently recommended in budget fishing communities, and the Okuma name carries enough weight that buyers feel comfortable with the purchase. The medium-heavy versions of these rods show the same pattern that runs through most of the budget tier blanks on this list. The power classification does not reflect a stiff, confident backbone. The lure weight ceilings on these models sit near the lower boundary of what most anglers would consider a true medium-heavy range. What you tend to feel is a rod that bends through the blank rather than loading at the tip and transferring power into the butt section. That distinction matters for technique. A rod that bends evenly through the whole blank loses energy on the hook set. These rods are functional for light freshwater fishing. They are not the medium-heavy rods their labels claim to be when it comes to heavier bass presentations. Lew's has a strong reputation in reel manufacturing, and their mid-range and upper-range rods have earned legitimate respect from serious anglers. The entry-level Speed Stick series is a different conversation. The budget tier, Speed Stick Medium Heavy, runs on the lighter side of its stated classification. Anglers who fish heavy jigs or dense cover regularly tend to find the blank lacks the backbone they need to work those presentations with confidence. For lighter to moderate, medium-heavy applications, the rod is acceptable, but the rating is not as accurate as what you'd find from Lew's Better series. If you're drawn to the brand, putting a little more money toward the custom Speed Stick or HS1 series changes the performance picture considerably. The entry Speed Stick in medium heavy is another case of the label doing more work than the blank. Now we get to a rod that's genuinely well made, but still creates some legitimate confusion in the medium heavy category. The Fenwick HMG uses the brand's carbon-bound blank technology, which makes it one of the lightest rods in its price range. The sensitivity is real and frequently praised by anglers who fished it alongside heavier graphite rods. The issue with the medium-heavy HMG is that the light swing weight and fast action can feel deceptively limber in the hand, particularly to anglers accustomed to heavier composite blanks. The rod is not soft in the way the GX2 is soft, but because it's so light and so fast, the medium-heavy version can give the impression of being underpowered even when the specifications justify the classification. Anglers fishing jigs and Texas rigs in the right lure weight range will find the HMG MH performs appropriately. The key is trusting the specs over the feel when you first pick it up. If you've never cast an HMG before and you're comparing it to a heavier blanked competitor on the rack, you may walk away thinking the label is wrong when the rod is actually doing what it claims. It earns a borderline position on this list. Better than most, but not without the asterisk. The 13 Fishing Fate Black Gen 2 has a following in bass fishing circles, especially among anglers who appreciate well-designed aesthetics and branding in the under $100 range. The Gen 2 improved over the original, and the medium-heavy models are functional rods for a range of presentations. That said, the Fate Black still falls short of what I'd call a clean, confident medium-heavy. It has enough backbone for lighter jig work, swim jigs, and topwater, but when you move into heavy flipping cover, punch rigs, or lures pushing toward 1 ounce and beyond, the blank begins to reveal a limit that doesn't match a true MH standard. It is the best of the rods that fall just short of the designation on this list. It is close, but close is not there. Here's where the list changes. The St. Croix Mojo Bass is one of the 3 rods in this comparison that actually behaves like a medium-heavy rod should. St. Croix builds their rods in Park Falls, Wisconsin, and their quality control and blank consistency are noticeably more reliable than what you find from offshore-produced house brands. The Mojo Bass Medium Heavy uses SCII graphite, Kegon guides, and a reel seat that holds the reel firmly through a long day without loosening. Anglers who fish Texas rigs, heavy jigs, and moving baits consistently report that the Mojo Bass MH performs exactly as the specifications suggest. The tip loads for accurate casts, the midsection and butt provide the resistance needed for a serious hook set, and the rod handles a fish through cover without folding under pressure. You'll spend roughly $100 to $120 depending on the length and where you buy it. That is a legitimate investment, but you are getting a rod that earns its medium-heavy classification without requiring any qualifications or footnotes. The Mojo Bass is the first rod on this list that does exactly what it claims. The Daiwa Tatula XT is the second rod that earns its designation cleanly. Daiwa's Tatula line has been consistent across price points, and the XT version delivers what the label says. The 7-foot medium-heavy casting version is rated for 10 to 20 pound line and up to 1 ounce in lure weight. That is an honest, medium-heavy specification, and anglers who fish it across jig presentations, frog fishing, Carolina rigs, and swim baits consistently report that the rod holds up to those claims. The blank is not a premium high-modulus graphite, but it is accurate, consistent, and well-controlled in terms of power classification. The guides are solid, the reel seat is tight, and the handle is comfortable through a long session. The Tatula XT won't give you the same sensitivity ceiling as a higher-end blank, and there is performance headroom above it if you're willing to pay for it. But what it claims to be, it actually is. That separates it from most of the rods lower on this list. The Shimano Expride B is the most expensive rod in this comparison, and in this specific case, the premium is doing real work. The Expride B in the 7-foot 2 medium-heavy casting configuration is a stiff, accurate, confidence-inspiring rod. You pick it up, tie on a 1/2 ounce jig, make a cast, and the rod tells you exactly what is happening on the other end of the line. The tip section is sensitive, but the backbone is present through the midsection in a way that lets you know immediately you are holding a medium-heavy rod. Anglers who fish reaction baits, crankbaits, heavy jigs, swim baits, and topwater report that the Expride BMH transitions between those presentations without revealing a weakness. The components, guides, reel seat, handle, are a clear step above mid-tier construction. This rod costs more. There is no argument about that. But if you want a medium-heavy rod that unambiguously earns the label and delivers that classification across a wide range of techniques, the Expride B is the clearest answer in this comparison. Now let's talk about what you should actually do with this information. The lure weight range, printed on the blank, is more honest than the power label alone. Before you buy a medium-heavy rod, look at the upper end of the lure weight rating. If the ceiling sits at 3/4 of an ounce or below, that rod is likely classified soft for its stated power. A genuine medium-heavy for bass fishing should reach at least 1 ounce without the blank being overwhelmed. When you can get into a store and handle a rod before buying, apply moderate pressure at the tip and pay attention to where the blank loads. A true medium-heavy should show resistance in the midsection early rather than bending uniformly from tip to butt under modest pressure. That uniform bend is the signature of a rod that's running a power class softer than labeled. Think about the last medium-heavy rod you bought. Did you check the lure weight range, or did you read the label and assume it matched your idea of what that power class should feel like? Let me know in the comments which rod on this list surprised you. Because I'd be willing to bet that more than a few of these are sitting in rod lockers right now being blamed for hook setting problems that aren't actually the angler's fault. Good fishing gear is not gear with the right logo or the loudest marketing. It's gear that performs the role it claims to fill. Medium heavy should mean medium heavy. 3 rods on this list actually deliver that. Now you know which 3 they are, and more importantly, you know how to evaluate the next rod before it ends up in your hands at the worst possible moment. Hit like, subscribe, and share this with an angler who's been buying rods by the label without checking what that label actually promises. I'm Jerry Davis, and I'll catch you in the next one.